baby or bathwater? This week, we look at some potentially problematic aspects of the church in the West, and we decide, is it baby where we keep it, or is it bathwater where we drain it and get rid of it completely? That's what's this week on To Be the Church. Welcome to the To Be the Church podcast, where we explore what it looks like to truly be the church in today's culture. Cody's behind the cameras today. I'm Tyler. That's Andrew. That's Joel Osteen.
Yep.
And Andrew, we have a little like a Trello board that people put questions on, or when people send in questions, they end up on our Trello board. So when we sit down and record, we can go to questions. And there was a segment idea that it was added by our good friend Ben Potloff well over a year ago. And that segment was called Baby or Bathwater.
Yeah.
And I thought this might be kind of fun. Even in light of recent episodes, we've talked about like maybe some of the negative aspects of different types of churches or church culture. And so let's dive in and decide, because we are the authority on this, but let's decide,
is all of humanity.
Is it baby or is it bathwater?
Okay.
Is it like, the old saying, throw the baby out with the bathwater?
I do know that.
Yes. Is it, is this just bathwater? That it's like, okay, we just need to like purge the aspects of this that are unhealthy? Or is it like do away with that completely? All right. Does that make sense? All right. So I came up with 4, just off the top of my head here. And then maybe we could even add to it as we go.
So what is Joel a part of this?
No, but Joel's just joined. Joel joins us every week.
Yeah, he does. So that goes back to Christmas Eve our Christmas Eve episode, right?
Oh, yeah.
Christmas Eve. That we unboxed the Joel Osteen game. And
yeah. And we're bringing it up today because people in our church have been like, wait, why is Joel Osteen in the background of the To Be the Church podcast? Go find our December episodes from 2021.
Yes, this is an ironic situation here.
Yes, 7 steps to living at your full potential.
I think we need to, dude, I was thinking of how we can deal with this, and I just got the idea of like making the Joel Osteen box into sort of a flannel graph. Maybe we could put a picture of like Piper, like a cutout of Piper, or like Paul Washer, like preaching to him on the box next to him, so that people would know this is an ironic situation.
All right.
Anyway.
Yeah. There's a lot of things we could do with old Joel's face there. Maybe it'd be like one of those like little Easter eggs where it's like something's different about Joel every episode. You have to figure out what it is. I fully believe that we don't have the creativity to do much with him, but or the maybe the stick-to-itiveness to do it.
That idea that you just had, that's baby. That's not bathwater.
Okay.
We need to keep that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So baby or bathwater. Let's start with pastors' conferences. I feel like in recent years, I've heard a lot of negative energy about pastors' conferences, where it's oftentimes they're headlined by huge churches who have had massive success that is like visible to the eye success.
Pragmatic.
Pragmatic success. And so I've seen a lot of things recently that's like, hey, like pastors, like maybe you should stop going to those conferences if you struggle with covetousness of another congregation, or if you feel defeated because your church isn't growing like that dude on the stages says it should or did. All these like, the idea of putting a square peg in a round hole. That dude up there is talking about a square peg that worked in his square-shaped context, but you're preaching or pastoring in a circle-shaped context, and it's just not working. And so, like, that begs the question, are they more unhelpful than they're worth? Like this idea, and I mean, this doesn't relate to a lot of our audience, but I mean, even as this is coming out, like we have a couple pastors who are at a conference the last couple of weeks. Should we have sent them there?
No, they are going to be under church discipline when they get back. So, dude, one thing that came to mind, because I've heard that over the years, so just let me talk around that a little bit, that idea of like they've had pragmatic success, and so they get on that platform, and it and I think we see how that is, but some people are like, hey, throw the dude up there that pastors the church of 50 people. And I even do, I've heard within Acts 29 world that some of the Acts 29 conferences and stuff and we just kind of got into that world a little while ago and haven't been to a ton of that, and a ton of that hasn't been going on through the COVID period, but that they do try to feature people with from different contexts, maybe newer church planters at times, or, other things. But one of the reasons I think for these bigger pastors conference that like you see guys up there that there has been, quote unquote success, pragmatically speaking, larger churches or whatever else, a lot of that's related to giftedness. Like the guys are gifted and and the Lord has gifted them. And if they're faithful dudes, there's been a lot of fruit produced through that gifting. And so they're on that platform, not because their church is a certain size, but because there's a specific gifting that person has that in a local context brings about results, fruit. And sometimes that obviously is definitely linked with pragmatic results, right? So, but anyway, pastors conference, baby or bathwater. I think if they're unhelpful, I don't see any reason that they need to like be a thing, I've been to them over the years a bit, and if they're encouraging and solid and whatever, they can be good, but I don't know. I don't think that they are specific. Like if we're talking baby or bathwater, just to figure out this segment, if it's baby, that's like, we keep it, right?
Yeah.
If
You don't want to throw out the baby.
Okay. I'm just making sure. Okay. So
how many kids do you have?
So yeah, I would call pastors conferences bathwater.
Okay.
Meaning like, could we do without them? 100%. Like you don't have to go to a pastors conference, like, know? And so, but here's a problem though, because there's aspects to those things which can be very helpful. Community is helpful. Encouragement is helpful. Hearing from, being in an environment where you're going to be outside of your context, where you're going to be maybe cared for, or you're going to connect with others, or you're going to be fed, quote unquote. That's a kind of a loaded term, but you're going to be outside of your context. You're constantly pouring out in your context. You go to a pastor's conference and that really helps you, and encourages you for the stretch ahead. In that sense, I would say those things are baby, but pastors' conferences, does it have to be in that format? No. So I think there's babies in this bath we're talking about here, but like the pastors' conferences specifically, the format of it, how they do those things. No, you could drain that. That doesn't have to be a thing.
I think of I think it was Jared C. Wilson. I don't know if he put it on, but he definitely spoke at it. There's a thing that they do in Kansas City called the Normal Pastors Conference.
Okay.
Which the whole idea is like, even on their website, it is. Let's see what it says here. A conference for the rest of us. Ever feel like the average pastor's conference isn't quite for you? Wish the average pastor's conference spoke to the pastors who are a little more, average. The Normal Pastors Conference is for any church leader who may feel a little discouraged in ministry, a little outside the scope of common church growth wisdom, or left out when it comes to the ever-changing trends in church resources. This isn't about big churches or small churches, or big platforms or small platforms. Whatever ministry context or scale, the Normal Pastors Conference is for any minister who is a little more convinced each day that he needs a lot more gospel and a lot less of himself. So anyway, that's an interesting.
So who speaks at it?
The last time they did it in person was 2019, and let's see here, Joe Thorne. Let's see, Jared C. Wilson. Who else? Yeah, some guys you've heard of, you know what I mean? Like they're Ronnie Martin, the dude who's on the Barnabas Piper funny podcast. I don't know what it's called. John, I'm going to mess up his name. Onwuchukwu, you know that guy? Yeah. So, guys like that. To where it's like, they've written books. Zach S. Wine did it one year, which he has a whole thing about normal pastors and stuff like that.
Zach's the best.
Yeah. So,
bathwater, get rid of it.
Yeah. The Normal Pastors Conference. No. Okay. So, Ben, I don't know if this segment's going to see the light of day. But here's one. Actually, we have two based on last week's episode where we talked a little bit about Hillsong, and we hadn't watched the show at that point. But should we sing Hillsong church songs at church, or Bethel songs at church? Baby or bathwater? It's like that church has some big problems. Bethel, Hillsong, name it, that church has some big problems. Should we completely throw out their songs as a whole because of what they've done?
It's really difficult, dude. And I think that's not a simple answer. And simply because Like, and I was actually just thinking about this recently, that I see guys who I agree with theologically, but who in many ways, but who are like very, very on their Twitter feeds, they're going to be like really anal about this and really like definitive, period, end of sentence, this is done. Like, you must stop singing Hillsong, or you must stop singing everything that ever came out of Bethel. And believe me, I don't agree theologically with either of those. I think Bethel's theology is like probably not even Christian, frankly. So, but then Hillsong's, on the line. But I don't, those worlds and the music writers that come out of those worlds, and some of the people who write and release under those labels also write and release under labels that, like, I mean, that world really well, that release under labels that, like, no one would say stop singing those, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, that's where it gets a little complicated, because everything that there's some weirdo stuff that comes out of Bethel. There's some weirdo stuff that comes out of Hillsong, music-wise, that you're just like, yeah, theologically. But I almost feel like you got to take the song and the lyrics specifically on the merits itself. And we've talked about this for years, I think.
Yeah.
So I would say there's certainly, as it relates to the churches and those kind of, Bathwater stuff, there's a lot of Bathwater in those things. But as it relates to a specific lyricist, a specific artist who might release out of one of those labels, what if the song, I mean, what's that one we've been singing recently, King of Kings?
Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't that from Hillsong?
Yep.
And you go through the lyrics of that, and it is like, it's like the confessional creeds of Christianity. It's just nothing, there's nothing. And so I just think to cut that song out, I mean, could you do it? Could you, if you're going to be like, that's going to be your brand and you never sing that song, cool, more power to you. But like, if it edifies the local church and it's true, comparing and compel, if it's true, compelling, and clear, which is, what we judge our songs on. I can't talk today, dude. If it is true, compelling, and clear, unlike my face right now, then I think you got to judge it on the merits.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. There's so much. I mean, we've talked about this with, like, do you take books that are theologically sound by guys who have fallen? You know what I mean? Like, guys who maybe have even denounced the faith, post fall or post their fall from grace, whatever, as far as public ministry goes. But yeah, we've talked about that on a lot of different episodes. Yeah, I'd say this one definitely is Bathwater. And we've had some people that have attended our church and even been in our bands who were very adamant that, like, they not be a part of singing a Hillsong song.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah. So, that's an interesting one. All right. So, this is like a really clear one, Baby or Bathwater. Not clear as in the answer, but clear as like, oh, it should be talked about. Based on last week's episode, that TV show is called Hillsong, a mega church exposed. Mm. So, Baby or Bathwater, based on like all the ridiculousness that happens, that we hear about, scandals, stuff like that. Celebrity pastors and mega churches, Baby or Bathwater.
All right, celebrity pastors, definitely Bathwater. You got to get rid of that. But
wait, so you should get rid of your, okay, yeah.
Drain it, dude. That's bad news.
Yeah,
I think, and I think that it's a difficult thing, because you're like, who makes the pastor a celebrity? Does the pastor themselves do that? Does their, like we were just talking about, does their gifting and the context that is built around them, does that do? But I think, how do we define celebrity pastor? It's like a disconnectivity from accountability, maybe. Things that are, I don't know, you just look at that world and you look at, like, whether it's the style or the thing or whatever. And I think that celebrity pastor that's unaccountable, doesn't have a team of elders around him who are holding him accountable and who are shepherding him. I think of the Paul Tripp books, Dangerous Calling and Lead, which are, one of them is about like the pastor and the other one's about the context around the pastor. And I think if celebrity pastor means guys that are unaccountable, that are kind of too big to fail, that get covered up for, that everyone around them becomes yes men, and that they have these big platforms they're in, like, yes, that's totally Bathwater. Some people would define John Piper as a celebrity pastor, or they define Mark Dever as a celebrity pastor, or Kevin DeYoung, or and I could list others that I read and respect, and you look at that and you go, are those guys celebrity pastors because they've written 60 books or because they have a blog that gets millions of hits? It depends on how you're defining that. If you're defining it as like what we've seen in some of these most recent ones we talked about last week, that the dude, there's a meltdown and you're like, oh, like stuff gets exposed that like there wasn't accountability structures around him. It was all yes man. And it was, if that's the case, then yeah, drain it for sure. Mega churches, that's a difficult one because a mega church used to be defined, at least I don't know if this is shift. The goalposts have shifted here, but mega churches used to be defined as any church over 2,000 people. So then you look at that and you go, do away with mega church. Okay, so what do you do there? Like, if we were to grow a little bit more in the next few years and get to that point where we were having over 2,000 people in the building on a Sunday, then what do we do? Then we're like, let's get rid of ourselves. Let's drain our faces. So I just think you look at that and go, how big is too big for a church? Some people would say beyond everybody. If it's too big where I can't know the pastor personally or I can't know everybody's name, then it's too big of a church. And you go, well, is that a biblical idea? So how big was the church of Ephesus? How big was the church in Jerusalem? How big were these different churches? So I just think there's no like way to really, what's the limiting principle on saying drain mega churches? Now, if the mega church is this pragmatic kind of celebrity pastor, unaccountable, just machine, yeah, I think you could drain that. I don't think that that's good. If there's a biblical structure, if there's accountability, if there's plurality in leadership, if there's, biblical preaching, if there's all these, again, going back to Mark Dever, if it is a church that has the marks of a healthy church, in that sense, and there's membership and there's discipline, there's all those things that are occurring. People are being shepherded like biblically, and these qualified leadership and, fill in the blank. But the church happens to be 2,001 people. That's baby. That's not bathwater. So church size to me, I don't think that's a matter of bathwater. But if by mega church you simply mean these like celebrity pastor developing organizations that perpetuate, transactional rather than relational life and just are constantly driving and are not healthy. Yeah, that could be bathwater. But that's more the way the church is functioning rather than the size of the church, I think.
Yeah, as of 2019, the Hartford Institute for Religion Research does still define a mega church as average weekly attendance of 2,000 or more.
There you
go. Back to that first one, the celebrity pastor piece. As you were talking, I was trying to think like what distinguishes it, because there are popular people who are popular for their sound teaching, and it's like they're popular because they're really gifted and they're leading people toward righteousness, right? And I would say I'd say Matt Chandler would be in that camp, right? Okay. Personally. Now, I would not say that Stephen Furtick is in that camp, but the people who follow him also follow him because of his teaching. And it's like, now it's not fully subjective because we're basing it on the Word of God, right?
Yeah.
But it murkies the waters a little bit because people are like, no, like I've grown in my faith under Stephen Furtick and he teaches me the Bible. Maybe because they, have no substantive Bible teaching experience or Bible listening experience. You know what I mean? I'm trying to be kind about it.
You are trying. But
I'm trying really hard.
Not working.
But you know what I'm saying?
Because they don't know how to spell the Bible. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying though? Like it's like, because I was thinking
John MacArthur. People would say John MacArthur's a celebrity pastor, but anybody who follows John MacArthur closely would not probably want that title to be given to John MacArthur, right?
Yeah, they wouldn't. Yeah.
So I'm just saying. I mean, insert who is Doug Wilson from Moscow, Idaho, a celebrity pastor?
I think like a guy like Judah Smith, it's easy.
Okay.
And I'm not saying anything about his teaching because I don't listen to it.
Yeah.
But he's famous and a celebrity because he's around celebrities.
Sure.
Like Russell Wilson, Justin Bieber, these guys like go to his church when they're in Seattle, stuff like that. It's like he's a celebrity pastor because of the celebrities that attend his church.
Okay.
Whereas, Furtick has like a huge popular church that I don't agree with. Chandler has a huge popular church that I do agree with, right? Yeah. And so just me personally,
Yeah.
and so it's like, I was trying to like draw clear lines between
Yeah.
baby and bathwater. It's like, oh, this is baby, this is bathwater,
Yeah.
but I don't think I can necessarily.
Sure, like the ones that you agree with are baby, but the other ones are Bathwater.
Exactly. See, no, that's what I was trying to do. It's like I was trying to think, okay, if they're known for the teaching, not the celebrity status, but it's like, oh wait, there's guys who are known for the teaching that, like,
it's a
just
tough
use
one,
their
dude.
celebrity,
and then who, like people can define, how's a celebrity defined? I don't know. I think when you start to become more global than local minded, maybe in your own head, like as a pastor, like you start to perform and try to teach like the whole world rather than your local church, and you become more disconnected from like the human people on the ground floor, and it's more about your platform and your brand and whatever than it is about shepherding God's people that the Lord has placed. I think relationship, dude, and context and plurality of leadership and those kind of things, accountability, I think those are the secret sauce to the elimination of the idea of a celebrity pastor. Because I think we've seen both sides of it here, where the technology, like we talked about last week, has created the context where like a lot of these guys are getting outed for stuff that maybe they would have got away with before. But then secondly, the technology also is what produced these guys' platforms. Like, we would not even know their names, and they wouldn't have been able to build those kind of platforms if it wasn't for technology, right? Yeah. So, or the platforms wouldn't have been anywhere near what they are now if they hadn't had that technology. So it's interesting. That's a good one.
So Ben, if you're listening to this, when you get back from your pastor's conference, bring in
with your celebrity pastors.
Bring in your ideas for the baby or bathwater segment, because if it's up to Andrew and I don't know if this is a segment's going to last, but I think you could bring in some good ones. So bring it back, Ben. For the rest of you, if you have if you have questions or thoughts, we'd love to hear from you. Podcast at tobeethechurch.com is the best place to do that. And until next time, keep being the church.